The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. Ralph Tomaselli has the night off. Our special guest in the studio tonight, you know him, Christopher K. Shortell, Republican, Wallingford Town Councilor. Chris, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we got some substantive stuff to cover, and an important one we're going to do right up front. April is Autism Awareness Month, if that's the official correct name. And thanks to Jonathan Chappell, who many of your viewers know, we got a little video clip sort of announcing or discussing autism and the month of April. Let's roll that, and then we're going to come back with Chris Shortell. 3, 2, 1, hit it.
Autism Services and Resources Connecticut serves a vital role in helping to educate and empower individuals and families affected by autism.
The ASRC is here for everybody, whether they're young, whether they're adults, whether you are on the spectrum for needing a lot of support or just a little support. We are here for everyone across the state.
So Chris, I'm not really skilled at talking about autism, so you may be, but what can you share with us of your connection with that issue?
Well, I have two sons, and my 8-year-old Zach is on the spectrum. My wife would be even better to talk about it because she's really been.
I really want to get basic. When you say on the spectrum,
yes,
would you boil that down in layman's language?
Autism is not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis. Okay. It is a spectrum. Each autistic child may have different needs, perceives things differently, and there's just a range, and it's no two children are alike. So that when people call it a spectrum, it's a little different maybe than cancer or some other diagnosis you may get. It's completely different, and it's not. I don't mean to compare it to that. It's just it's unique to the child, and so in the classroom, for example, a technique that you may use on one child with autism to help them learn a certain skill or a certain piece of data may not work on another child. You may have to use something different. So that's when I say it's a spectrum. That's what I mean.
And what's your involvement with this event coming up April 28? What's your connection with that event? What's going to happen if you know? I
don't. So that event, we always seem to miss it, which is every so.
Yeah, should have asked.
I know. It's okay. We want to go, and I know. So, but I think we went a couple years ago. But what it's about though is and Jonathan could tell you much more, but it's about awareness, and awareness is the big issue. So many more children are being diagnosed.
So, as someone sort of on the outside of that issue, what should the viewers walk away with in the way of new information or an awareness at the end of the month?
Well, I think you want to learn if you're a grandparent. Even if you're not a parent of a child, but if you're a grandparent or if you're a parent of a child who doesn't have it, but maybe you know people whose children have it, you want to understand what it is, because autism, a lot of it's about how they perceive the world. And you may look at a child and you may think, well, they're acting out. Well, they're not. They're reacting to stimuli, and it's how their brain processes things. So I would say learn about it, and certainly if you're a parent out there, you should get involved in your local school system. You have rights. We have PTAC in Wallingford, Parent Teacher Advisory Committee, and I think Jonathan is active in that. There's also a special education PTAC that he is involved with, and that's a great partnership with the schools, the administrators, as well as parents, and that's a great way for parents to get involved.
So how is the Wallingford school system, how would you rank or grade the Wallingford school system in respect to rising to the challenge of a student population, some of which are on the spectrum.
I think it's a battle for them. And then when you hear Sal Menzo talk about costs, and basically he said this at the public hearing, that costs are going up because the population of special needs children is increasing. One experience we had in the school system was a grant-funded program called the STARS program at Stevens, which was a classroom, it was kindergarten, and it was for, our son was in it, and it was an excellent program. He was able to be mainstreamed by March of that year, but that was totally grant-funded. And I remember I think it was my first year on the council, and we had some debate among the council, not about that program in particular, but about grant funding in general, and why should we have grant funds? Because then they dry up and then we have to pay for it. Well, this grant was tremendous, and it was definitely a worthy program. It's still in existence now. I think it's a 5 or 10 year grant. So it's an example of something the school system is doing to serve this population.
Let's change the subject and talk about tolls. And what I want to do is get some facts out first, so we can sort of start with a level playing field. Kind of a serious discussion, but the town council took it up, or purported to take it up, at a recent council meeting, and to have a vote on it. But I wanted to start with something that you knew we were going to talk about tolls, but you didn't know I was going to go to the Connecticut Mirror and pull out a little pop quiz. Okay. Now, we're not going to break your arm if you get them wrong. In fact, I'm going to come up with the right answer, just, so, we're not stressing you out.
I love quizzes. This is great.
But it's a basis, to get some facts out on the table and a variety of different things. So let's play the quiz.
Okay.
We're playing the quiz. Here we go. Mark down your score. The special, and part of this is nomenclature, just getting familiar with the nomenclature. The Special Transportation Fund represents 8% of the overall state budget, about $1.6 billion out of $20.7. What is the single largest expense of the Special Transportation Fund? Department of Transportation Operations, bus and rail operations, debt payments on borrowing for capital projects, Department of Motor Vehicle Operations. You're right. Debt payments on
I was going to guess operations.
Debt payment on borrowing for capital projects.
Okay.
Second question. Connecticut sells bonds on Wall Street to borrow money for highway, bridge, and rail projects, and to leverage hundreds of millions of federal grant dollars for this work. How much bonding did Connecticut issue last fiscal year? I'm going to run down 5 numbers, okay? 200 million, 500 million, 525 million, or 800 million. Pick one.
Well, I can see the one that's highlighted. So
800 million.
The big number. The big number.
800 million.
I won't look next time.
No peeking. I'm going to cover it up.
All right, cover it up.
How many taxes does the state impose on regular gasoline? 1, 2, 3, or 6?
6.
2. It's the motor vehicle fuels a gross receipts tax. That's 25 cents a gallon.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 25 cents a gallon, sort of a flat tax, and then a gross receipts of 8.81 of the wholesale price. Okay. So 2 taxes there. Connecticut's 25 cents per gallon retail gasoline tax raised $495 million 10 years ago. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
How much is it projected to raise at the same 25 cent rate this fiscal year? So 10 years ago, $495. And did it raise, or projected to raise, $315 million, $465 million, $505 million, or $740 million? $495, 10 years ago.
I'll go with the big number.
740?
Yes.
The answer is $505 million. Let me just pause on that because it's significant. The gasoline retail per gallon, 25 cent per gallon tax raised $495 million 10 years ago, and it's only raising $505 million in the projected year. Mm-hmm. It's basically flat, which is needed background for an issue with, maybe we'll get into. Okay. Connecticut's wholesale fuel tax increased 4 times between 2006 and 2014 fiscal years. How much revenue from the tax went into the budget's general fund, not the Special Transportation Fund, during those 9 years? So here's, it was increased 4 times, and was it rated by 1.3 billion, 1.9 billion, 2.4 billion, or 7.6 billion during those 9 years? It's an aggregate amount.
2.9.
1.3. So sometimes you might hear Republicans say, well, the Special Transportation Fund was raided. It's true to some degree, but 1.44 million per year spread out over all that time, equaling 1.3. So yeah, the Special Transportation Fund has been raided, but it's as a percentage, it's not a big number, and hence the lockbox. Remember the lockbox
on the ballot,
and that's supposed to have, and it did really stop that. Governor Lamont's administration estimates that congestion tolling applied to cars and trucks would rate how much per year? 200 million, 400 million, 600 million, or 800 million?
800 million.
Yeah.
I knew that one.
You knew that one.
I knew that one.
Well, we'll give you maybe one more. Voters approved. No, I'm going to give you two more. Voters approved an amendment to the state constitution last November creating a legal lockbox to protect revenues dedicated to transportation. What percentage of voters voted for the lockbox? 54%, 79%, 84%, or 89%? You're right, 89%.
I was not going to guess that.
That's the biggest, the biggest number. All wanted the lockbox.
Okay.
Finally, and then we'll get
Okay.
changed a little bit. The State Department of Transportation's recommended tolling rate is 4.4 cents per mile before any discount is applied. The average off-peak rate in the northeastern U.S. Okay, so we're hearing a proposal of 4.4, but what is the average off-peak rate in the northeastern U.S.? 4.3, 5.9, 6.3, or 6.4?
6.3.
6.3
I
is
read that
absolutely right.
somewhere. Yeah, I actually had read that.
Yeah, absolutely right. So that was kind of fun. The discussion on tolls, let me just bear with me for a minute.
Sure.
I just want to get some facts out. So the discussion on tolls needs context, no matter how you do it. And by luck, today, Wednesday morning, because we're producing this on Wednesday evening, in the Hartford Courant, there was some excellent context. Bear with me, I want to read some context of what's happening in other states. The headline in the Hartford Courant is, for roads, even in red states, take a hike. And it starts out this way: Lansing, Michigan. After passing waves of tax cuts in recent years, some lawmakers in several Republican-dominated states have decided it's time to make a big exception and are pushing for tax increases to fix roads that are crumbling from years of neglect. In the past month alone, Republican governors of Alabama, Arkansas, and Ohio have signed fuel tax hikes. Meanwhile, proposed increases are being considered by 3 legislatures that are fully or partly GOP controlled, including a 45 cents a gallon hike in Michigan. The moves show a growing willingness in conservative places to take on the fearsome politics of higher taxes, at least for infrastructure. Quote, it's going to take $2.5 billion a year, said Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce CEO Sarah Baru of Michigan's road building needs. Anyone who thinks you can cut even half of that from other elements of the state budget without having significant ramifications to real people, you're smoking something that's not legal in Connecticut. It may be legal soon, but it's not yet. Finally, I'm winding down here. Then we're going to. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer won election last year after running on the slogan, "Fix the damn roads." Her plan would gradually add 45 cents to the cost of a gallon of gasoline by October 2020. And then Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican who attacked his opponent in the 2018 as tax-friendly, this month signed off on a 10.5 cent a gallon tax increase on gasoline and a 19 cent tax increase on diesel. And they go on and they talk about Arkansas and other red states. That's the context. So let's talk about what happened to the town council a few days ago with respect to tolls. What did happen at the Wallingford Town Council?
Sure. Well, Councilor Fishbein, also one of our state reps, brought to the council agenda a resolution that would oppose tolls, basically.
Yeah.
And it was on the agenda, and we had, I think it was the only thing on the agenda that night, actually. And so we had a discussion about it, We had some people come to the microphone. Not a lot. There was a toll, an informational forum hosted by Craig and I think Len Fasano and other Republican legislators the next night, which I didn't go to. I think you went to that, but that filled up the auditorium. But the night of our meeting, there was maybe 15 people in the audience, and maybe 5 of them were there for the tolls. There were other people there for other agenda items or the budget hearing was after that meeting. So basically that was the discussion, and then there was a vote, and I was the only Republican to vote against it.
Well, you better tell us why.
That's
shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not feel that it was appropriate for the town council to suddenly. I thought it was just very political. And I know, look, this is politics. Town councils get political, but I understand that legislative bodies do pass resolutions. But this legislative body, the Wallingford Town Council, to my knowledge, historically has not been in the business of passing resolutions. And we can get into this because you were on the council many years ago. Maybe you can correct me on that. I'm sure there were many different world and state events that occurred during your tenure. Maybe there were resolutions and I didn't.
I don't remember any, frankly.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there could have been, but I just don't remember any symbolic type resolutions that weren't directly connected to the business in front of the town council.
Right. Right. There was one other one that we voted on in this, the end of the last term.
Walk us through what that was and the rationale for it.
That was a resolution brought forward by the mayor and by Chairman Cervoni and by the Coalition for Better Wallingford, basically urging federal action on the Marino bill, which was about the EPA and the regulation of opioids, and it was this loophole that they felt had to be closed, and it was the timing was it was the week before an election. It was the week before the 2017 municipal election that it was our last meeting, and I had misgivings about that one, but I ended up voting yes on that one because I felt that the mayor argued passionately for it, Corporation Counsel Janice Small argued passionately for it. Chairman Cervoni argued for it. The coalition argued for it. And Craig had issues with that, I remember, because he thought it wasn't accurate. He thought it was targeting the wrong bill. And I respect Craig. But on balance, I thought it was driving awareness of something. And to me, the whole opioid epidemic, we can't drive enough awareness of that. I know things seem a little better. We have some good stats the last few years, but this one, this resolution on tolls isn't driving awareness on tolls. There was an election 6 months ago where we had 2 gubernatorial candidates, one of whom said he was going to put tolls in. I know only on trucks. I'm not sure who believed that would just be it. But I mean, that's the guy who won, and we had a referendum question on the ballot. So tolls, we're aware of tolls. This didn't drive awareness.
So what was the point? Was the point sort of cheap political grandstanding to for political gain? I mean, what was the point of all this?
I think the point.
Yeah.
I think there is certainly a passionate outcry. People don't want tolls.
Yeah, but so what? I mean,
I think it's responding to that, and I feel like it. But I think
so. It was pandering? Is that all?
It's not pandering, but I also think that this is a trend we've seen in other town councils across some town councils. Wallingford wasn't the first one to do this, and I think the main reason I didn't vote for it was I felt like it was sort of a gotcha way to make locally elected Democrats squirm in their seats, and it bothered me because guess what? That goes both ways. They could come right back next week and come up with resolutions that would make me squirm. And then I can come back and we could do this all year back and forth.
There's certainly room for tit for tat. And that's what Ralph Tomaselli was commenting on. I think it was the last show that it's designed to make Democrats squirm. I disagree with you, though. I think it is pandering. I think it is political theater. I think it is grandstanding, and you're absolutely right. If one can play the game, 2 can play the game, and then there's a never-ending slippery slope. Yeah. And in my humble opinion, it devalues sort of the mission of the Wallingford Town Council, cheapens it, and they could rise above it or they could sink below this partisan divide. They chose to sink below, in my view, and not rise above it. And frankly, if the Democrats were on their game a day or 2 before, they would have insisted that another resolution go on the town council agenda that very same night, discussing the seriousness of climate change and what can and should be done about it, and have those debated side by side. I mean, and the next time anyone tries this, and it's a political thing, not an awareness, because I think that's a distinct difference. On the opioid issue, everybody understands, the scourge of opiate addiction. Everyone knows that and wants to stop it. This is a political fight in Hartford. So the town council weighed in on, on a political fight that really doesn't belong at the local level. So the Meriden Record Journal on April 10, and so it's a little bit dated, reported it this way. The town council passed a resolution opposing tolls on Tuesday night. Skipping, the resolution passed 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. Councilors Jason Zandri and Christopher Shortell and 1 abstention, Gina Morgenstein, were the 2. Wait a minute. The resolution passed with 5 yes votes and 2 no votes from Councilors Jason Zandri and Christopher Shortell. So Jason Zandri voted no, and Gina Morgenstein abstained. And she said in the article it was not appropriate for a town councilor to take a stand on a state issue. So the Meriden City Council and the Southington Town Council proposed similar anti-toll resolutions. Meriden tabled the resolution, tabled the discussion at its April 1 meeting, and Southington voted against taking action on March 25. Berlin, on the other hand, may take this up on April 16, and Wolcott did pass a resolution on April 3. So where do you stand on the merits of the tolling debate?
Well, got
any thoughts?
I'm undecided.
Okay.
And I know that's probably worse than voting against it. If for any Republicans watching the show, how can you be undecided? And I look at the issue and I don't want tolls. I don't, because I know you never get rid of them. You put them in, and we got rid of them because there was a fatality 35 years ago, and that's what it took to get them. But with modern technology, you don't even need the booths. And there was that one awful graph, that one proposal of gantries all up Route 7, and I understand that it's a regressive tax, but at the same time, to the point, the article you read at the beginning of this segment, I feel like on so many issues, I question my own stance. And so while I'm not for new taxes, I don't want to raise taxes, but at some point you have to be open to solutions. Reagan had 2 of the biggest tax increases in history, Ronald Reagan. So at some, you just mentioned Republican governors looking at this. So at some point, I think you have to be open to something. And I don't know that I haven't seen any plan yet. There's borrowing on the Republican side. We're going to borrow. Is that the solution?
Yeah, I'm going to try to summarize that if I can pull my thoughts together. But I want to ask you, I refer you to the op-ed I had in this morning's
I read it
Journal. No, okay.
Twice.
So as I understand, and this is brief and this is general and maybe oversimplified, the Republican plan is to take $750 million of special tax obligation bonds. Special tax obligation bonds, as I understand, are supposed to be dedicated to transportation, and they are to be funded with the gas tax that we talked about and the wholesale gas receipts tax that we talked about in the Special Transportation Fund. The Special Transportation Fund is supposed to pay the principal and interest on these $750 million per year, and there's more. There's another piece of this. As I understand the math, the principal and interest piling on year after year after year after year is outstripping the ability of the gas tax, the gas taxes and the new car sales tax, outstripping the ability of those funds to pay the principal and interest. And so officials in Hartford have said the Special Transportation Fund is going to run dry. The Republicans say, no, that's not true. I don't understand the Republicans' math. But that's $750 million not paying cash for projects, but $750 million in bonds, principal and interest. The other piece of it, Connecticut has a bonding cap of $1.9 billion. So that means they're not supposed to sell more than $1.9 billion in bonds when every time you sell a bond, principal and interest, comes due. That cap is not a matter of state legislators' statutes. It's a covenant in bonds that we sold to Wall Street. So if we sell $2 billion and exceed the cap, it's an event of default and all the bonds could come due. So that's about $700 million. You add $700 million to the other, and according to the math I read, it's about $1.5 billion in debt. That's the sort of in the weeds math. We had Vince Candelora on the show last week, and I said, well, you want to take $700 million or so from general bonding. Don't you think someone's going to notice that? I mean, someone's not going to get the other amount. And he made it appear like, no one's really going to notice missing $700 billion, school construction and other causes. So the Republican plan, has a lot of debt, and it'll squeeze out other programs. The Democratic plan has tolls where tolls are sort of in your face. They're right there. You got to pay out of pocket. They're obnoxious and they are aggressive. The debt is sort of silent and stealthy. You sort of don't notice it, but sooner or later it squeezes out other programs. That's the best I can do. Your final thoughts, then we'll change the subject on it.
It's a tough issue. Yeah. I do think you need things like reciprocity agreements with other states to collect the out-of-state money. There was some stat that Massachusetts has, I don't know how many, 200 million, and they can't collect.
Yeah.
But they make $1 billion. So it's like when you look at the total revenue. So I think there's got to be a solution somewhere. I would hope that we can figure it out, and that someday. But what we need. I will just leave you with this. I did vote against tolls when I voted for governor on a vote that counted in November. That was the vote that counted, not the vote on April 8th. So
yeah. Let's change the subject to something a little more frivolous. And let's talk about local elections. We're going to take it out of order from what we talked about earlier. Local elections, local politics, election 2019. First of all, is the entire slate of our team, all the incumbents running again on the Republican side, as far as you know?
As far as I know.
And the mayor always says, well, I haven't made up my mind. I'm too busy running the town. I'll let you know in July or something. But it's understood he's running again. Do you have any reason to think he's not?
None.
Yeah. Okay. So now, is it going to be, again, a matter of name recognition, which it always is? I mean, there are no issues that ever come up in campaigns, I don't think. But it's a question.
Well, I mean, I think there's always the stuff people put on their cards. Now, whether or not those are legitimate campaign issues.
Those are so general. You could be a
similar
Democrat
general.
Or Republican,
people
still,
could, yeah. I mean, there's the pool that could be. I don't know if the whole. There's that issue. There's if I don't know. You're right. I mean, I guess the same issues seem to come up in terms of we're overtaxed. I mean, your side likes to say
I don't have a side.
You don't have a side. No. The Democrats, talk about overtaxation and
because I never said that.
Okay, you've never
said
okay,
that.
all right. And the Republicans talk about the bond rating, and everyone has their talking points. So I guess you're right. I guess there's no issue. I guess there's no real issues.
Substantive.
Yeah.
All right. What about Jared Liu versus the mayor? I mean, what comes to mind when I bring that contest up?
So I'm going to hit you with some trivia. You hit me with a quiz. I hit you with a quiz. That's how we do it here. Point. So a lot of people after the 2017 election thought that Jared Liu did well. Being somebody who was kind of an unknown. He was not Vinny Testa or Jason Zandri. He didn't, kind of came out of nowhere. But I went and pulled some numbers because I thought he did well too, but I wanted to actually put that in the context of the 18 elections that Mayor Dickinson has won. So my trivia question, the question for you is, where, if you look at Jared Liu and his margin of defeat in terms of percentage,
right,
of the 18 elections, so one being the closest, 18 being the biggest blowout, which I think was in 2003 against. No, I'm just kidding. It was not 2003. 18 being the biggest. Where would Jared Liu's 2017? How did you do
comparatively speaking?
Yes. Where does he rank in the 18?
Well, I don't know where he ranks, but I think he's within the margin of error of all the Democrats that have won and lost. I mean, that would be my guess. Right after the election when Mayor Dickinson won, Ralph and I were talking about the Trump bump for Democrats, that right. Democrats overperformed because of Donald Trump, either because more Democrats came out to vote against Trump or they were resentful, and so Democrats did better. I never thought Jared Liu did particularly better than anybody else, but I thought, a few percentage points here or there, up or down, I think it's all within the margin error or luck or the weather or something like that. But what is your research?
Well, I ran the numbers.
That scares me.
Yeah,
that scares me.
Right.
Go ahead.
He came, if you look at the 18 elections, his performance was around the 6th best
The sixth best.
Sixth best. So
Okay.
he had 41.79% of the vote. So that was the best Democrat turnout, best Democrat performance since you ran in 2003. You had 43.16%.
Wow. See, that's the margin of error.
There you go. Okay.
See,
But-
that's the weather or
That's the
something.
weather.
You
But
know.
let's go back to Vinny Testa and Jason Zandri had about 28.5%. So he did significantly better than the last two Democrat candidates who I would argue have a lot more name recognition and
So your point is, watch out, William W. Dickinson Jr.
no, I'm not saying why. I'm just saying it. I'm saying that it was interesting that the other point is there was really low turnout in this election in 2017.
Right.
For whatever that it was one of the, and we've had actually 3 of the last 4 elections again have been some of the lowest turnout in the 18 elections.
Well, I
So-
think, as long as we're talking about mayoral politics here, I think there's always going to be about 35 to 40% of the people in Wallingford that are going to vote against Mayor Dickinson, not necessarily voting for the Democrat,
Right.
but 35 to 40% always voting against the mayor. And that 5% or so is what I call the margin of error. To get above that 40%, or, to get within single digits, to get within 9
Right.
9 points behind the mayor, maybe there's something to that. If you can get as close as that. I think when I ran, I lost by about 1,900 votes, but that was I think sort of a slightly above average turnout. I don't have the raw vote count
It was.
in mind.
It
But
was.
after the election, I freely said that I got absolutely smushed. So if you're sort of in that 42%, 43, 44%, you're getting smushed. I don't,
Understood.
You can take some sort of consolation that you did better than the last guy or something, but you're still getting smushed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's like losing
Thank
to the
you,
Yukon
Chris.
women by 50 instead of by 100. I understand that, but I'm just, I think I think you look at these numbers, you look at the low turnout, and you have to, if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican, and not just, at the mayoral level, but even the council level, I think you kind of start looking at, well, look at all these registered voters who stay home for these elections.
Yeah.
And if I can just get, X percent of them to get out there and then X percent of that percent to vote for me. So I don't, optimism springs eternal. You never know.
Let's change the subject because we got two big things, and
Sure.
we don't have too much time left. I want to talk about the arbitration matter with CMEC. Quick background: Wallingford has had a long running dispute with its previous power supply provider. In the course of the years, Wallingford has developed many contracts with CMEC, Connecticut Municipal Electric Energy Cooperative, I think is the full name of it. Wallingford, since 2013, had this dispute. It brought arbitration proceedings in 2015, and the matter has been going on ever since. It's finally come to a conclusion. I think everyone went into this thing knowing that CMEC would owe Wallingford some money. The expectations early on, as published in the newspapers, published reports, it was like $17 million that Wallingford might get back. Maybe at one point it was 17 to 20 million. Finally, after the arbitrator has made a series of rulings which either awarded issues to CMEC or awarded issues to Wallingford, the amount of money has been narrowed down, and now we know, well, Chris, how does about 3.7 million sound that Wallingford's going to get? How do I come up with that number? It's in the documents. I mean, that's a guess. But in February, if you read my Facebook post, I said it was about 3 million based on the documents on file with the arbitrator, public records that I got and I read. It was pretty clear that the damages were in the $3 million range in February, give or take a couple $100,000. Then in March, two big issues are decided kind of out of left field. One was a $500,000 matter, so I'm up to 3.5, and the other is an award of interest, and I don't know how much that is. So, assuming it's something close to that, is that a victory? Is that a defeat? Are you satisfied? Are you unsatisfied?
Well, my understanding was that
Yeah.
the mayor talked about 18 million, and this goes back a couple of years. This predated me on the council. So this is something that
Right.
I inherited. I got on the council in 16.
Let me interrupt you because there's one more fact.
Sure.
The legal fees that Wallingford has incurred, legal arbitration, expert witness fees are in the $2.8 million range, 2.9 million. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, around that. And I think and I was trying to go back before the show and confirm this. I know there were 2 votes since I've been on for more legal fees, and I want to say one was for 190,000, one was for about $500,000 that I have my fingerprints.
You were complicit in.
I was complicit in. That's right. That's right.
How I like to phrase it.
But I remember the mayor talking about we're chasing. At one point, he said, I think in early 2017, in response to a question from the public, we're spending $2 million to get $18 million. But he always talked about the $18 million as a combination of past overcharges and future savings. So I don't know if your figure that you were referencing, your $3 million,
past damages.
That's just past.
Past.
Okay, because they've never, to my knowledge, the administration's never spoken just in terms of past. They've always talked about future savings and past, and they've talked about this $18 million number.
Where was that, an executive session or something?
No, in public. You can go on YouTube.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
You can go on YouTube and see it.
Yeah,
so that's my to your point about is it a victory or not? I think the final. I think that's the first. To me, there's 2 measuring sticks. There's on 2 ends. So at the very, very, very minimal end of the spectrum, you want to get your money back. I mean, just as a baseline.
Sure, you want to get at least 2.9.
At least 2 point. Okay, that's down here.
And until March, that was sort of touch and go.
Well, no, it wasn't because the future savings hadn't been determined.
Well, you don't know what the future savings are.
I might.
Someone has represented it to you, but that's not a credible source. We'll get into that on another show.
Okay, all right.
Because that same sources that said we're chasing $18 million, they've got a lot of credibility problems. Unless there's backup spreadsheets and a firm basis for any number they come up with on future savings, I would question it. I don't think the council would, but we'll see. It'll all become public at some point.
Right. So if CMEC was charging us something, I just want to. So how do I? Because we've had executive sessions, we have documents, some of which are confidential.
Well, a lot of these agreements have expired. The big one has run its course. Wallingford backed out of or discontinued the so-called 50 and 5 or microgen in 2018. So a lot of these contracts are no longer in play.
Right.
So any claim of huge savings in the future, I'm not going to believe. But
okay, I know you won't believe. Okay,
yeah,
well, I'm telling you, if I go to Stop and Shop's bad example right now.
Yeah.
If I go to Big Y and I buy a turkey every week for $5, and then I end up after the litigation paying 25 cents for the turkey, I think that's the future savings.
Okay.
All right, and if that's all I'm saying. So 18 million to me is the standard. 18 million is the high. Kind of we're chasing this number, but again, it was a combined amount, future and past.
So you happy? Let's back up a little bit.
I'm never happy.
You know exactly what the future savings are, at least as quoted to you. You've been told. It's a super secret. You know what the settlement amount is. That's super secret, but it's in a document. At some point the public will know, but you can't say right now. I think you swore a blood oath. I think.
Right.
I think you swore a blood oath. I want to examine with you now. The reason for that blood oath, who benefits by it, what's the rationale for it, why you believe in it, why you follow it. And while you're collecting your thoughts, I just want to say this. Congratulations to Wallingford in the CMEC arbitration matter. They're coming back they're going to get about 3.7, give or take. Vinny Cervoni will be on next week. He'll have the exact number, I think. The attorney's fees were, let's say 2.9. We're going to round it up. So Wallingford cleared almost $1 million after this litigation. A little more coming in for what they call true-ups for 2018, and some vague promise of future savings, which you guys can defend if you want to. But congratulations, it all worked out.
Now, confirm or deny none of that, but keep going.
You don't have to because I know. Okay. But what's the rationale for the blood oath you took to keep everything so secret? And I guess the context for my question is, it's a secret now. You're going to go in executive session. It stays a secret. If it's such a big secret, someone's going to make a motion to approve the settlement as discussed in executive session. It'll be passed, and then it's over, and then you say, okay, any questions? Right? Is that how it's going to go?
I guess this is my first CMEC lawsuit, so I don't really know.
Well, it's like any other.
Is it like any other
confidential,
workers' comp claims we do?
Because otherwise, if someone makes a motion, let's approve the CMEC settlement, and it's open for public discussion, what's the point of keeping it secret from tonight on? What's the whole point of that secrecy? Why can't you just say, yeah, it's about 3.7 or yeah, it's 3.712? I mean, why can't you just discuss it? What's the rationale for the blood oath? You're on.
I have no. It said attorney-client privilege information. That's what the document said that I have in my. I didn't bring it.
They're following orders.
Well, I am. If something says attorney-client privilege, I can talk about. I understand that there's a level of frustration throughout this whole process because, and maybe this is not what you're. The fact.
No, go ahead.
Well, the fact that when asked about this, the mayor it's like a Bill Belichick press conference after a Patriots game where he just doesn't want to talk about anything, and you have people coming to the microphone, even asking him what's in the public document, and he won't even talk about it.
Well,
so is that?
I know that's what happens. I want to know how you feel about that. That's what I want.
How I feel about that.
Yeah.
Well,
we know what happens. How do you feel about it?
I think that it's a legal matter, and I'm not sure that I want the mayor, if Wallingford's my client and I'm a lawyer, do I want the mayor commenting on every single ruling by this arbitrator?
I'm talking about now and tonight. Now. You know what the settlement is,
right,
to the penny.
Right.
You know what their projections are for future savings.
Okay, yeah.
You know all that. You're under blood oath to keep it a secret.
Right.
And woe unto you if you leak it. And I want to know, what is the value in that secrecy, and to whom does it value? Who benefits from that secrecy?
What if the motion fails?
So
then it goes back to we don't settle anything, we don't sign any documents, and then it goes back to the arbitrator. I don't know.
Is that it? Is that the reason?
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to pass. I can't count. I look at I have no idea if this will pass. This is going to be on Tuesday night.
So I think what you're saying is we don't want. Certainly, CMEC knows what the number is.
Right.
And CMEC doesn't care what Wallingford's claim of savings is. So you got to be careful not to let Wallingford taxpayers know, Wallingford ratepayers. That's who you're keeping it a secret from. Yeah?
Well, they will know. I mean, they'll know when the whole thing is over.
Supposing it fails, you're going to keep it a secret to your grave.
To my grave.
Yeah, that's your blood oath.
I'll come back on.
I want to know why you don't want Wallingford ratepayers to know. And you said because you got a letter that says attorney-client privilege.
Right.
That's pretty much bunk, and I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But I don't care what the letter says. I want to know how you feel about it. What's the rationale for the blood oath?
I think it's a pending legal matter. And
so
it's still a pending legal matter.
So what?
And it's something where they choose not to want to talk about it and have it tried in public. I'm
not getting my question out clearly.
Yeah.
How do you feel about depriving Wallingford ratepayers, you personally? Someone comes up on the street.
Well, I don't.
And you say, well, it's a legal matter. Don't you want to tell them?
Won't they know after when it's done? They'll know.
But why not tell them now? Why not tell the viewers now?
Well,
That's what
we're
I don't
chasing.
understand.
I mean, we're chasing $18 million. All
right, so
it's we've spent $2.8 million to chase $18 million, and we're going to vote on a settlement.
Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go into executive session, and there's going to be a review of the procedural history of this thing with the councilors, and a review of the substantive rulings on these contractual disputes, all of which is public information. But you're under a blood oath not to talk about the public information. And so you go into executive session, you discuss all these things that are contained in documents, which you could discuss publicly, but all 9 councilors choose not to because they get a letter and they say, you're under blood oath not to reveal it. Then there's a settlement which both parties have agreed to. CMEC knows what that agreement is, but you want to keep it, because you've defended yourself for like the last 10 minutes, you want to keep it from the public until it's too late to do anything about it. And that doesn't benefit anyone except the political careers of Dickinson, Jerry Farrell Sr., you guys, because you're well-behaved, and you go along with this. I'm just trying to pull teeth from you. Why the blood oath and who does it benefit? And the only answer I'm getting really, well, we're told to keep it a secret, but you got a shot at it again. We're going to come.
I don't know. Yeah. I guess I thought that this was something we would not, in general, over the course of my, 4 years or 3.5 years dealing with this.
Right.
To me, the idea that we're chasing $18 million in both past savings or past overcharges and future savings is That's the critical number. And the minutia of all that, to me, is not something that I want tried in public. I don't want every time there's a ruling.
But this is not what you want. This isn't about you. This isn't about...
You just asked me how I felt, though. This is about me. You're asking me how I feel. How I feel is I do think that I don't want, like, the mayor commenting every time the arbitrator rules on something. Do we really want, the press breaking news, and then we're going to have the mayor react to it like it's, I mean...
So here's what I'm getting at. If you could make the rules, if you could decide what is attorney-client privilege, and if it was totally under your control, you would have it unpackaged the same way it has been unpackaged. You would have seen this arbitration and the public comment handled the exact same way. If you could write the rules, you're the attorney, you're the mayor, you write the rules,
right.
You say, we handled it exactly right. When people come to the microphone and ask about, wasn't there an order 2 weeks ago?
Right.
You agree there was an order, it's a public document, but I'm not going to discuss it with you. You agree with that approach?
I largely do agree with that approach because I don't need the mayor going on record saying what a bonehead the arbitrator is, and then the arbitrator reads that, he's in Hartford, and then that influences, he's human, and that maybe influences future decisions. I don't know. I mean, how would you handle it? Walk me through, if you were mayor, if 2003 had worked out differently.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Because
I can tell you don't watch a Citizen Mike show.
I would
be open and honest. Although not necessarily expansive. From time to time, in my view, the public deserves a briefing on what has happened recently and what we expect to happen in the future, without giving away any trade secrets that CMEC, the opponent, does not know. So maybe yearly, maybe every 6 months, you go in front of the council and say, we have had a hearing, we had these witnesses, they testified on some technical terms of the contract, CMEC had their experts, they disagreed with our interpretation, we have filed briefs, the value of this matter is really up to the arbitrator, but it ranges from, making up numbers here, $750 to $1.2 million. That's where we stand. I can't comment on, what I think about the arbitrator or too much, but generally that's where we're going. But I'm happy to answer questions to the fullest extent that I can without I'm happy to answer that. So it's sort of, well, I'm glad you asked that question. You have a right to know, and there's nothing that I can say that is going to harm anyone's interest here, because CMEC knows exactly, their opponent knows exactly what I'm telling you. And that's how I would handle it. And tonight, as you sit, you know the number. You've been sworn to a blood oath, but if you didn't have that blood oath, it's much more honest, in my view, with the ratepayers to say, yeah, the settlement agreement, subject to the approval of the council, is 3.72 or whatever it is, 3.6 or 3.9 or 4, whatever it is. That's what it is, and we're going to be discussing that because, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to know about it anyway. You might as well know about it now, because I trust you with the information and where you're represented. So I would be very free with that. Say before the meeting, it's been a tortuous process. Our hands are tied in many respects because rulings are already in. And voting this down doesn't accomplish anything because the arbitration is basically over. Mm-hmm. And that's the position we're in. Rather than say, well, I can't talk about it, I can't talk about it, I can't talk about it. Your thoughts?
All right.
Never mind.
That's great. You're all about transparency.
You need a different kind of mayor. I'm sorry, but you need a different kind of mayor to handle it that way. He's not used to being frank and honest with the voters.
Oh, I don't think he's not being honest. I think, though, in general, we had, on two. Okay, let me bring in two different things.
Sure.
So on the budget, we can't. He'll never give us an answer on the surplus. Whereas Sal Menzo will give us an answer. Like, you can ask Sal Menzo at any point in the fiscal year,
where do we stand?
Menzo he tells the Board of Ed. We're running over by 500,000, but we know Highland's going to need a new freezer, so don't get too excited. The mayor refers us to the audit, and that's frustrating. That one is frustrating. To your other point about executive session, we have these gatherings for union contracts, and I say the exact same thing in public that I say in the executive sessions. I talk about the same stuff.
So why do you do it in secret? So if you say the same thing in public, why do you bother to say it in secret?
Get with the gatherings.
That's improper. If
right.
you can say it
I
in
don't agree
public,
with
you
those
should-
either.
Yeah.
But on this one, I don't know. On this one, I don't know if it's because it's very esoteric and because it involves another public entity. If because I don't know what it is, why I feel the way I do. But on this one, I'm not as fired up as I usually am on other stuff.
Well,
about
that's why those feelings that you just, and thank you for sharing those, is exactly why the Freedom of Information Act was passed, 40 years ago, because there's a natural difference of interest between politicians who want to keep things secret and the public who wants to know.
Right.
And the politicians will find a way of keeping it secret, and these smoke-filled rooms, back in the 50s, 40s, 30s,
Right.
60s. So the Freedom of Information Act was passed to break down the door of those smoke-filled rooms. But people still find a way around it, and secrecy is still highly prized by public officials, and it's up to the public to jealously guard the few rights they have to know what's going on. And when a public official says, we got to keep the secret from you, not from our opponents, we got to keep it a secret from you, those public officials, all 90, frankly, and the mayor, need to be, held to account. We've done it tonight, and I'm ready to move on and talk about
Only
the
we
pool.
had training on FOI.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. As I say, Chairman Cervoni's going to come on, and we'll
Okay.
we'll
You can break his arm about the gathering.
We'll break. So I got about 4 minutes left, and I'm not sure I can get this. I'm not sure. Yeah. So let's talk about community pool. There's a community pool plans and specs, drawings and concepts are being drafted as we talk. How do you feel about how things are going with respect to community pool?
Well, I'm happy to see things moving. We funded a very, I think $600,000 to fully move into a design. But I'm worried about what we're hearing because the initial, and I'm going to set you off. You're about ready to go to Hulk out on me.
No.
The initial
drinking my water. I'm off camera.
All right, yeah.
reaching for my
The initial
water.
4.5 to 6 million range that we were sort of presented with in, I think, September of last year. Now there's some sort of new information, whether that's really doable for what was presented to us. So I think that's one thing I'm worried about. The other thing I'm worried about is, for me, and I've expressed this since the meeting, actually in writing to the mayor.
Yeah.
I voted for the funding to get this thing, keep this thing moving, as we all did, most of Laterno voted against it. If it comes down to a vote in September, it can't just be about the pool. It has to be about how they run the pool. I have to have assurances that the pool is going to be open longer, that people have easier access to passes. I've said this at every meeting, and people nod their heads, and there's silence. So at some point, I can't keep supporting it unless we can't spend all this money on a pool if we're not going to change philosophically how we run it.
So we're going to have some more shots, not you and I, but we're having Chairman Cervoni on. And we're having Jason Zandri on. So we're going to have some more opportunities to talk about this. One issue that has bothered me is the size of the pool has gone down from currently it's 42,000 square feet. The consensus size of the pool in the fall and presented to you guys, where you were quoted as saying, I'm very excited about this, I'm all in, that was 13,000 square feet. So it went from 42,000 square feet as it is now.
Most of which isn't used.
Hold on.
Okay.
It went from 42,000 to 13,000, and now it's down to 10,000
Yeah.
square feet, and no one seems to care. And how that decision was made, no one seems to care about that. The other issue is how the pool is managed, which is the issue that you were getting to. The broader questions, I'm going to fill in some blanks there. How long is it going to be open? Mm-hmm. What nights, the season,
Right.
Beginning date, ending date. Is it open a couple nights during the week for people that need to go after work? Are there going to be food trucks in there? No one seems to want to pin the administration down on getting these details. And the pool is not just a structure, it's a program. And I just want to get your quick thoughts on sort of the lack of commitment to address that.
I don't know, and that's
Yeah.
why I wrote a letter, and after that meeting, and I said I'm not voting for it. If I lose an election because I don't vote for a pool, so be it. But I'm
Yeah.
done talking about it at meetings. I say at every meeting, and no one seems to want to respond about keeping. I mean, it's closed the 2 hottest weeks of the year. It closes
end of August.
It closes around August 10th, August 11th, and
Which is insane.
yeah, and so it's and the whole idea that you can't get it, you have to go to Park and Rec, You can't just go to the door and get a day pass,
Yeah.
So,
Well, we don't have time to get into this in detail, but we will in future weeks, unfortunately, when you're not here. But the reason why this is such a hot button issue with me, and we talked about this off camera, sort of in preparing for the show, is I went to the community pool with our grandnephews from Toronto, 3 toddlers, last summer for one day, and we sort of said, one day we can go to the pool, and one day we can go to Ham and Acid.
Right,
So
right.
they heard about the pool, and I go to get tickets and try to get passes in there, and boy, it was expensive for one day. Really expensive for one day. They can only come down, 1 week of summer, and so I think that option is out, for one day for, actually it was 4 adults and three toddlers. And then the issue was the management of the pool, for many reasons we'll get into next week, is a very negative experience, just how the pool was managed. And with respect to the pool not being used, half of it. So we showed up there at 11 in the morning, and it was a hot morning. It was in August. And at about 12:30, we were crowded in with all kinds of kids splashing around us, and half the pool was roped off, as you said. Half the pool was roped off. A woman that had a blanket next to us asked the lifeguard about that, and I eavesdropped on that conversation. And the lifeguard said, well, we'll open it later. And the lady said, well, don't you have the staff? And the lifeguard said, yeah, we have the staff, but if we open up the whole pool, our breaks are shorter. Thanks, Christopher Shortell, for coming on. This discussion will be continued at some point.
I don't get the last word?
Yeah, you get the
No,
last
I don't have
word.
anything.
No,
Let's talk about CMEC again.
No, I want you to
Okay.
get the last word.
I don't have anything. Thank you for having me on. Happy Passover, happy Easter, everyone.
It's been fun. Thank you for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We're here on Wednesdays. It's on WPAA on Fridays, Monday, Tuesdays, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 9. And we used to say if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. It's also on YouTube. Go to the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel and follow all the prompts, and you can get the Citizen Mike Show on YouTube. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and thanks to Chris Shortell.